want to preach for a little while using this subject, how to exit 2018. Tell the person beside you, we are about to discuss the proper way to exit 2018. I want to begin this message by simply stating that everything literally rises and falls with leadership. That is absolutely true due to the fact that in Genesis chapter number 50, the children of Israel, who happen to be God's chosen people, find themselves in the land of Egypt. Immediately, one chapter later, in Exodus chapter 1, the children of Israel, who happen to be God's chosen people, are still in the land of Egypt. What amazes me is not that Israel is in Egypt, both in Genesis 50 and Exodus chapter 1. But what amazes me is, in fact, the reality is that in Genesis chapter 50, Egypt is a place of provision. But immediately, one chapter later, in Exodus chapter 1, Egypt, which used to be a place of provision, is now a place of persecution. The question has to be raised, what has changed? Obviously, the land did not change. The land didn't change due to the fact that both Egypt in Genesis 50 and Egypt in Exodus chapter 1 is a place where the children of Israel reside. But although the land did not change, it is absolutely amazing that the leadership inside of the land changed between Genesis 50 and between Exodus chapter number 1. In Genesis chapter 50, Egypt had a Pharaoh that honored the children of Israel. And because Egypt had a Pharaoh that honored the children of Israel, the land of Egypt in Genesis chapter number 50 was a place of provision for the children of Israel. But immediately, one chapter later, after the death of Joseph, the Bible declares that Egypt has a new Pharaoh who does not honor the children of Israel, but instead this Pharaoh is threatened by the children of Israel. And because he's threatened by the children of Israel, the land that used to be a place of provision is now a place of persecution. The first thing that I want to say to everyone in here under the sound of my voice, everything rises and falls with leadership. As a consequence, you've got to be extremely careful at the end of 2018 and extremely careful at the beginning of 2019 of who it is that you submit yourself to and what type of leader you surround yourself with. You have to be extremely careful of the leadership that you are under, because when you are under leadership, every leader will either honor you for the gift of God inside of you, or if they are insecure, they will be threatened by you because of the gift of God inside of you. If you are under a leader that honors you for the gift of God inside of you, it is quite interesting to note that that leader is a resource for provision. They are a resource for provision, so much to the point that because they are not insecure, because they are not envious, because they are not jealous of the gift that God has placed inside of you, they recognize how your gift benefits them. And because they recognize how your gift benefits them, they promote you. And the reason they promote you and put you on a whole nother level, because they come to the understanding that everything that you touch is going to prosper, that everything that you put your hands to is getting ready to succeed. As a consequence, because they are not threatened, they say, you've been faithful over a few things, and now I'm getting ready to make you ruler over many. A person who is not insecure comes to the understanding that the only reason my business is prospering, and the only reason my organization is prospering, and the only reason my nonprofit is prospering, and the only reason my LLC is prospering is because I got somebody gifted that's running the whole thing, and everything that they touch is a blessing to the entire company. But woe to the individual that is submitted and and surrender to insecure leadership. Because whenever you submit yourself, whenever you surrender to insecure leadership, this is the type of leader that is not going to be a resource of provision. This leader is going to be a resource of persecution. They are threatened by your gift, and they do not understand that if God removes you out the equation, the entire business is getting ready to go under. They are threatened by your gift, and they do not understand that if God removes you out of the equation, the entire nonprofit is getting ready to go under. As a consequence, because they are threatened by you, rather than them mentor you, they try to murder the one that they are supposed to be mentoring in the first place. I really believe that a wonderful example of this is, in fact, the relationship between David, the second king of Israel, and Saul, the first king of Israel. Have you not considered in 1 Samuel chapter number 17, David is anointed, but he's not yet appointed as king. And because he's anointed, but he's not yet appointed, he fights this Philistine giant by the name of Goliath, slays the giant, goes back to Israel, and the praise team in Israel started singing a song. Here's the song they started to sing: Saul has slain his thousands, and David has slain his tens of thousands. And because Saul is an insecure leader, he does not recognize that having David on the squad benefits all of Israel. Instead of him looking at how David compliments him, he starts to try to compete with David. So he cannot see the reality: we slain 11,000 altogether. The only thing that he's looking at is that I killed 1,000 and David has killed 10,000. As a consequence, Saul tries to murder David when he should be mentoring David, because everything rises and falls with leadership. Whenever you find yourself under leadership, either you're sitting under somebody that is not insecure, and so therefore, as a consequence, their leadership is a resource for provision, or you're sitting under somebody that is insecure, and therefore, as a consequence, their leadership is a resource for persecution. I really believe that that's the reason the Bible declares, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. You got to watch who you sitting around. You got to watch who you sitting under. Nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits inside of the seat of the scornful. The question has to be raised: why do I need a leader in the first place? I need a leader because there's some things that I need to exit in 2018. And if I could get myself out without a leader, I would have already been out of it by now. If I could get myself off of drugs, if I could get myself out of depression, if I could get myself out of low self-esteem, if I could get myself out of a bad marriage, whatever it is that you need to exit in 2018, if you could do it by yourself, you would already be out by now. But is there anybody in here under the sound of my voice who can attest to the reality that, God, I need you to surround me at the end of 2018 and at the beginning of 2019 with Christ-centered leadership? I need somebody who's not threatened by me. I need somebody who's not insecure. I need somebody who's not jealous. I need somebody who's not going to water down the truth. I need somebody who's not going to sugarcoat the truth. I need somebody who'd come alongside of me and push me when I don't want to be pushed. Is there anybody in here under the sound of my voice who can take 30 seconds and celebrate God for the leadership He's placed inside of your life? Genesis chapter 50, Genesis chapter 50. The land of Egypt is a place of provision. Exodus chapter 1, the land of Egypt is a place of persecution. What amazes me is not that Israel is under persecution, but why they are under persecution. The new Pharaoh rose up in Exodus chapter number 1, and he said, the children of Israel are becoming too big. The children of Israel are becoming too mighty. And lest they rise up and revolt against us, let's make slaves out of of all of the children of Israel. As a consequence, on the surface, it seems as if the new Pharaoh in Exodus chapter 1 is threatened by the growth of the children of Israel. But I want you to understand it's a little bit deeper than that. I need you to elbow your neighbor and tell him it's just a little bit deeper than that. Go ahead and tell him it's just a little bit deeper than that. He's threatened not just by their growth, but you really don't understand the root of this threat until you look at the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis chapter number 12, God goes to Abraham and says, Abraham, I'm making a covenant with you. I need you to leave everything familiar, your country and your kindred. Go to a land that I will show you. The first thing that the covenant involved was a land. He said, after you get to this land, I will make you a great nation. Abraham, you're going to have so many children that it outnumbers the grains of sand on the seashore and the number of stars in the sky. Then he says, Abraham, I'm going to empower you to be successful because I'm going to bless you, that in you all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed. And the last thing he says is, I will make your name great. The fact that he makes his name great says, I'm going to make you a good reputation and you'll have a world of influence. It is not until Exodus chapter 1 that part of this covenant starts to come to pass. Because in Genesis chapter number 12, God says to Abraham, I'm going to make you a great nation. He says, although you don't have any children, you getting ready to be so large that nobody's going to be able to stop you. It is not until Exodus chapter number 1 that the children of Israel began to grow large and they began to multiply. And as a consequence, the enemy is threatened not just by their growth, but the enemy is threatened because they are starting to walk in the original promise that God gave them in the first place. Somebody just missed it. I wish I could say it again. The enemy is threatened not by their growth, but the enemy is threatened because they start to walk in the original promise that God gave them in the first place. Now, if God has never made you a promise, you can sit down, be quiet, and go to sleep. If God has never made you a promise, you don't have to shout right now. If God has never made you a promise, you don't have to give God glory. But if you know that you know that you know that you know, I got some promises from God, I think it'll take 30 seconds and celebrate God for the promise. For the promise that's over your life. Somebody shout, I got a promise. The enemy is threatened not because of your growth. The enemy is threatened because he don't want to see you walk in what God promised. I'm going to say it again. He's threatened not by your growth. He's threatened because he don't want to see you walk in what it is that God has promised. As a consequence, he's throwing every roadblock that he can throw because he wants you to give up just before the promise. But I heard Paul say, be not weary in well doing, but in due season I'll reap if I faint not. I heard Isaiah say, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up on wings as eagles, run and not get weary. They shall walk and they shall not faint. The enemy wouldn't be threatened if I wasn't walking inside of my promise. As a consequence, in Exodus chapter number 1, the Pharaoh says we got to put the children of Israel in slavery. We got to contain them. And in Exodus chapter number 2, the children of Israel grew sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because Egypt represented bondage. Yeah, you sitting up here dressed up on the outside, but in 2018, in spite of you being dressed up on the outside, is there anybody in here who needs to exit out of some bondage? Is there anybody in here who knows what it is to be in bondage in your thought life? Who knows what it is to be in bondage inside of your heart? I'm carrying and I'm harboring unforgiveness. Who knows what it is to be in bondage inside of your financial life? Who knows what it is to be in bondage inside of your family life? And the problem with many of us, we become comfortable in bondage. We've learned how to function in bondage. We've learned how to go along, to get along in bondage. So now the enemy has tricked you and fooled you and tried to make you think that life is going to always be like this. But just before Israel started to think this way, they got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I wonder if I got about 200 or 300 people in here who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Exodus chapter number 2, because they are sick and tired of being sick and tired, they cry out to God. And after they cry out to God in Exodus chapter number 2, in Exodus chapter number 3, God called a leader by the name of Moses. Somebody just missed it. Exodus chapter number 2, they cried. Exodus chapter number 3, God called. I got a smart class, but I believe that y'all are even smarter than this. I'm going to say it again. Exodus chapter number 2, they cried. But in Exodus chapter number 3, God called. Everything rises and falls with leadership. Come a little bit closer. The call of God's leader is always connected to the cry of his people. Don't you ever get it twisted and think that God calls you because you're so wonderful. Don't you ever get it twisted and think that God called you because you got it all together. Don't you ever get it twisted and think that God called you because you the bomb.com. Is there anybody in here who can attest to the reality? God didn't call me because I was perfect. God didn't call me because I crossed every T. God didn't call me because I dotted every I. God didn't call me because I always said the right things. God didn't call me because I always did the right things. God didn't call me because I always thought the right things. But the only reason he called me is because somebody was crying to get out of bondage. Is there anybody in here who can take 30 seconds and celebrate God? He didn't call you because of, he called you in spite of. In spite of all of my flaws, in spite of all of my faults, in spite of all of my failures, in spite of all of my shortcomings, God called me anyhow. Somebody shout, he called me. He called Moses. He said, here's what I want you to do, Moses. Moses, you were raised privileged. But although you were raised privileged, your brothers and your sisters are in bondage. And rather than you enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, I need you to get down inside of the dirt with them. In other words, he says, I need you to come out of the pulpit and get in the pit. Because the only reason I put you in the pulpit was to pull people out of the pit. I wish somebody could hear what I'm saying. I'm going to say it again. So he says, Moses, I'm raising you up. I want you to go to the court of Pharaoh. I want you to be bold now. I want you to say to Pharaoh, let my people go. Says, let my people go. Pharaoh ain't listening because his heart is hard. So God sends a series of plagues in the land. The first plague, he says, I'm going to turn this river into blood. Pharaoh still didn't listen. Then he says, I'm going to cover the earth with frogs. Pharaoh still didn't listen. He said, I'm going to turn the dust into lice. Pharaoh still didn't listen. He said, I'm going to cover the earth with flies. Pharaoh still didn't listen. He says, after I cover the earth with flies, I'm going to send plague after plague after plague after plague in order to get Pharaoh's attention. He says, I'm going to kill all the livestock. Then I'm going to cover their bodies in boils. Then I'm going to cover the earth with locusts. Then I'm going to cause hail to cover the earth. After I cause hail to cover the earth, I'm going to send darkness over all the earth. And if you still don't get it, I'm getting ready to kill the firstborn. So by the time we get to the last plague, Pharaoh's heart is still hardened. God says, I know what I'm getting ready to do. I'm going to send the death angel throughout all of the land. And the death angel is going to affect everybody whose doorpost is not covered and smeared in blood. So he says to the children of Israel, I know you're in bondage in 2018. But if you want to get out of this bondage, I need you to take a lamb without spot or blemish. It is a foreshadowing of the perfect lamb, Jesus the Christ, Son of the living God. He says, I want you to take this lamb. I want you to kill the lamb, slaughter the lamb, sacrifice the lamb. I want you to sprinkle the blood and smear it across the doorposts. And I'm going to send death throughout Egypt. But when the death angel sees the blood, it's going to pass over. Can I pause to tell somebody you were in bondage, but it could have been a whole lot worse in 2018 because there's somebody who knows what it is to dodge death. And you sitting up here in church acting like you've never had death to show up at the door. But is there anybody in here who knew that Satan was threatened by your promise? So he tried to take you out. But the only reason I'm still here, and I hope you don't tear the church up, is because of the blood of Jesus. Woo! I dare you to take 30 seconds and thank God for the blood. I plead the blood over your house. I plead the blood over your marriage. I plead the blood over your children. I plead the blood over your finance. Somebody shout the blood, the blood, the blood, the blood. Should have been dead, but the blood covered me. Should have been crazy, but the blood covered me. Should have lost my mind, but the blood. Somebody shout, it reaches to the highest mountain. Don't make me feel like it. It flows to the lowest valley. The blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose its power. Somebody shout, it still works. Somebody shout, it still works. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming around the mountain when I come. I'm coming. Somebody shout, it still works. I'm trying to leave it alone, but I dare you to take 30 seconds and celebrate God for the blood that was shed over 2,000 and some odd years ago. It still works. It still works. All right, I'm almost there. I got about 10 minutes and I'm getting ready to raise up. Since the blood, Pharaoh let him go. Pharaoh let him go. What amazes me is not that he let them go. What amazes me is that they didn't exit empty-handed. But they exited with all the spoils from Egypt. They exited with all the gold. They exited with all the silver. They exited with all the riches. So what God sent me here today to tell you is that you're not just getting ready to exit. He said, but when you exit, I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. Oh, I wish you could hear what I'm saying. I'm going to say it again. You're not just getting ready to exit. But when you exit, God says, I ain't going to leave you empty-handed. You getting ready to have all the joy you need. You getting ready to have all the peace you need. You getting ready to have all the love you need. And if you need a financial blessing, my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. He's not going to leave you empty-handed. They exit. Pharaoh changes his mind. He starts to pursue the children of Israel. And they come to the Red Sea. And we get to the circumference of our text. They come to the Red Sea, and when they get to the Red Sea, they're absolutely afraid because water is in front of them. Pharaoh and the army is behind them. The front represents their future. The back represents their past. What do you do when you're afraid to move forward and you're afraid to go backwards? I'm talking to somebody. What do you do when your future is threatening to drown you and my past is threatening to destroy me? And the Bible declares that just before they exit, God speaks through Moses to give them some principles on how to get out. I got 5 things and I'm getting ready to raise up. Number 1, I must exit 2018 free from doubt. Somebody shout, free from doubt. Exodus 14, verse number 11, when they see the water in front and when they see the army behind them, they started to doubt God. They said, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Don't that sound like a doubt? But what amazes me is not that they doubted. How can you doubt God when you've already seen too many miracles? How can you doubt him when you watched him turn the river into blood? How can you doubt him when you watched him cover the earth with frogs? How can you doubt him when you watched him turn dust into lice? How can you doubt him when you watched him cover the earth with flies? How can you doubt him when you watched him kill all the livestock? How can you doubt him when you watched them cover their bodies in boils? How can you doubt him when you watched him cover the earth with locusts? How can you doubt him when you watched him cover the earth with hail? How can you doubt him when you watched him cover the earth with darkness? How can you doubt him when you watched him kill the firstborn? What I'm trying to say to somebody, I'm not going to doubt God now because I've already seen him do too much in the past. And I know you having a Red Sea experience at the end of 2018, but is there anybody in here who can attest to the reality, I've seen too much to doubt God now? Yeah, this ain't the first time you've been stressed. This ain't the first time you've been broke. This ain't the first time you've had low self-esteem. This ain't the first time you've been unemployed. But I saw what he did in 2013, and I saw what he did in 2014, and I saw what he did in 15, 16, and 17, and I watched them all 2018, and the same God who did it back then, the same God who can do it right now. Number two, not only am I going to exit free from doubt, I'm going to exit free from complaining. Somebody shout, free from complaining. Tell the person beside you, I know you grown, but watch your mouth. Tell them again, I know you grown, but watch your mouth. Woo, I feel it. Tell them one more time, I know you're grown, but watch your mouth. Exodus 14, verse number 12, they say, Moses, it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than for us to die in the wilderness. Times get hard, and all of a sudden they start complaining. I don't know about you, but when you read this narrative, their complaining turned an 11-day journey into a 40-year journey, and they kept going around in circles. Anybody ever ask God why it's taking so long? I dare you to ask him, because I guarantee what he's going to say back to you, watch your mouth. I'm praying, God, why is it taking so long? It's taking so long not because you didn't pray, but because you didn't watch what you say after you pray. For the Bible declares in Mark chapter 11, verse 23, whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed and be thou cast into the sea, and believes inside of his heart and does not doubt, but believes that those things that he says shall come to pass, he shall have not what he prays, but whatsoever he says. Somebody shout, watch your mouth. Here's number three. I'm coming. I'm getting ready to come around the mountain. When I come, I got to exit 2018 free from fear. Somebody shout, free from fear. I need you to shout it to the whole east side here. Just somebody shout, free from fear. Exodus chapter number 14, around verse number 13. With the future getting ready to drown them, and the past getting ready to destroy them, water in front of them, Pharaoh and his army behind them, God speaks to Moses and says, tell my children, fear not. God, are you crazy? I mean, anybody in their right mind would be scared. Not just scared, but scared. I mean, how could you not be scared when your future's going to drown you and your past is going to kill you? Moses says, I don't want you to be afraid, not because you don't have a Red Sea experience, but the reason you shouldn't be afraid is because God is with you in your Red Sea experience. When I was a young child, I used to get into fights. I know you can't believe it. You think I've been a preacher my whole life. Haven't been a preacher my whole life. Mama is a judge, but used to fight in school every now and again. And when I was fighting somebody and I was afraid of that individual, I would go get my big brother, who's our security guard right now, my big little brother. He was the littlest thing in school, but he was the baddest thing. I don't even see how he a Birmingham police right now, because that joker used to always get put out of school. But watch this. I was afraid not because I wasn't in a fight. I was afraid because in the fight, I had somebody to fight my fight. And what God is speaking to the body of Christ, I know you're having a Red Sea experience, but the reason you should fear not is not because you're not having a Red Sea experience, but because God is with you in spite of. And when I look back over my life, and I look at all of the experiences that could have taken me out, but the only reason I'm still here is not because I didn't go through it, but because God was right there with me. When I look back over my life And I look at all of the stuff that could have killed me, all of the stuff that could have destroyed me. When you look back over your life, the only reason you are still here is not because you didn't go through it, but because God was with you. As a consequence, I got to exit 2018 free from fear. Number 4, I got to exit 2018 free from busyness. You've been doing a lot, getting nothing accomplished. So Moses says, I don't just want you to fear not, but after he says fear not, he says stand still. 2019 is going to be the year when you do less but accomplish more results. He says, I want you to stand still because sometimes you are too busy to hear from God. Sometimes I'm too busy to study the word of God. Sometimes I'm too busy to talk to God. Sometimes I'm too busy to be able to hear from God. But God is saying that if you are going to accomplish more, you got to fight yourself to do less and just get inside of my presence. I got to exit 2018 free from busyness, but here's the last thing. I got to exit 2018 free from blindness. You so busy looking at what's wrong that you can't see what's right. But if you can count your blessings one by one and never stop counting until it's done, this will be your testimony. God, if I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't thank you enough. God, if I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't praise you enough. God, if I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't worship you enough. He says, fear not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. In other words, he says, I want you to be blind to your fight, and I want you to open your eyes to your victory. I'm going to say it again. Be blind to your fight, and I need you to open your eyes to your victory. Now, if you don't got the victory, you can sit down, be quiet, and go to sleep. But if there's anybody in here who can take 30 seconds and give God some praise right now, because you know that you know that you know that you know that 2018 has been a rough year, that 2018 has been a tough year, but I'm praising God at the end of 2018 because I'm free from fear, I'm free from doubt, I'm free from busyness, I'm free from complaining. Is there anybody in here who's free from blindness? I think it'll take 30 seconds and celebrate God. If you know what it's like to be delivered out of bondage. I was thinking deep in sin. I was far from the peaceful shore. I was very deeply. I was stained within. I was sinking to rise no more. But the master of the sea, he heard my despairing cry, and from the waters he lifted me